One of the most radical and countercultural things that Jesus did as a rabbi in the first century world in which he lived was his inclusion of women in the movement of itinerant preachers. This move was considered revolutionary in the context of a Jewish society that was largely male-oriented or androcentric and patriarchal. In fact, I am inclined to believe that this was one of the reasons why Jesus did a lot more preaching outside than inside the synagogue setting. He preferred the less formal setting where women and men, adults and children, rich and poor, were mixed together, not segregated. And since the kitchen and the dining room seemed to have been a favorite place of Jesus, he tended to be more closely in touch with women. In the Gospels, we hear about Jesus calling attention to certain unseen and unnoticed characters like the mother-in-law of Peter or the mother of James and John, sons of Zebedee. Or remember the widow of Nain, or the poor widow who donated the 2 copper coins to the temple treasury, or the Syrophoenician woman. Or remember the woman who had hemorrhage, and the woman accused of adultery whom Jesus defended against her detractors, and the women who were bringing children to Jesus. And of course, there was also the woman who anointed Jesus, whom we heard about in yesterday's gospel. In Mark, Jesus would give this anonymous woman a very special recognition, which I don't remember Jesus giving to anyone else. Listen, he says, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will be told in memory of her. Most rabbis, if not all, in the time of Jesus, had only male disciples. Jesus went around with both male and female disciples, and some of them are identified by St. Luke in today's gospel. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, the wife of Herod's steward, Susanna, and many others. Aba, marami sila. Meaning, these women walked along with the 12. Even the designation apostle is not to be equated only with the 12, because St. Luke tells us Jesus sent out on a mission not only 12, but 72. And the first disciples ever to be sent as apostles by the risen Christ, the very first of them was not even a male, but a female, Mary Magdalene. Pope Francis seems bent on calling attention to the importance of women in the life and mission of the Church. It is the reason why he elevated Mary Magdalene and her memorial into a feast day that acknowledged her as an apostle to the apostles. Take note of that importance, no? John's Gospel speaks of the importance of that woman whom he met by the well, who became an apostle of Jesus to the Samaritans. Remember in John 4, verse 39, we read, many of the Samaritans of that town began to believe in Jesus because of the word of the woman. It is the Gospel of Luke, among all the Gospels in particular, where one can really feel Jesus' partiality for women. In his infancy narrative, it is the women characters like Mary and Elizabeth, more than their husbands Joseph and Zechariah, who play the more significant roles. In the temple at the presentation, aside from the old man Simeon, there is the prophetess Anna. And finally, it is only in Luke chapter 10 where we hear of Mary of Bethany. She's described as sitting at the feet of Jesus. And that means she was counted as a disciple, because to sit at the feet of a rabbi is to be a disciple of that rabbi. And her sister Martha, of course, felt uncomfortable about this. And Jesus had to tell her, "Your sister has chosen the better part. It shall not be taken away from her just because she's a woman." And foremost among all his female disciples, of course, we have Mary, his own mother, the most significant of the women in the life and mission of Jesus. John tells us she was the only woman who could pressure Jesus to do something about a crisis situation, even if his time had not yet come. And it is to this woman, the mother, that Jesus would entrust his beloved disciple as a son to a mother. And of course, at Calvary, only the women stood bravely by Jesus at the foot of the cross, according to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the first three Gospels. Where did the males go? Well, they went into hiding. Well, understandably, we have the fourth Gospel attributed to John, who tells us there was one male disciple who stood by Jesus at the foot of the cross with Mary. But he does not give him a name. He just calls him the beloved disciple. This morning, in his homily, our mission chaplain at the Sacred Heart Mission Station of the Diocese of Caloocan, Father Willie Samson, SJ, called attention to the fact that majority of our active volunteers and leaders in our parishes and mission stations are women. He says, it is women who dominate our churchgoers, our basic ecclesial communities, our chapel leaders, our pastoral councils, our youth groups, our scholars. He says, we cannot deny that without women, very few of our ministries in the church will be able to function. The church's main strength comes from the love and dedication of women, their participation in the mission and ministries of the church. And I agree with him.